Well, hello, and welcome to Barbershop.talk Sports, hosted by J Rod and KC.
All righty. All righty. Hey, let me tell you something, fans. We are very excited about this because we said and we promised you on last Barbershop.talk podcast that we're going to have a sister station called Barbershop.talk Sports. And we're going to do that today. And we have a special guest. Our special guest is one of our listeners, longtime listeners, I like to add, and that is Phil In. Phil In, please feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you, J Rod. It's good to be here today, and I appreciate being able to fill in for KC. Those are big shoes to fill in for, but I'll do my best.
Well, no worries, because we got to find out later after the show where is KC. Now,
that's a mystery, and I'm not sure I want to delve into that. That can be awful sketchy.
It could be, but we're going to talk about sports today because that we promised, and I got a couple of categories for you. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about, Phil In, is I see you got a Pacer shirt on.
I sure do.
So we're going to start talking about the Pacers. Now, I take it that you are a fan and you just didn't luck up and get a free T-shirt. Is that correct?
Well, a little bit of both. I got a free T-shirt as a gift, and I also am a very strong Pacer fan.
Okay, I like that strong Pacer fan. Now, saying that, do you remember the season before last, of 2024, when they went to the finals?
Yes, exciting times.
A very exciting time because at that time I thought that they played as a team. So what I'm going to ask you, Phil, is to compare that team with the current team, with the understanding that they don't have a final roster at this point. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, I think that this year is going to be really exciting. It's intriguing, and I guess I like the mystery of it all. It's one of those things where you never can exactly compare one team to the other because they got some different players. But it seems like they've been really methodical about going after getting, quote, team players. And I think the big if is like anything else is, can the Halliburton that's coming off an injury, can he perform like he's done in the past? And that's a big ask, honestly, from coming back from that type of major injury and being able to have the same explosiveness and the same confidence to do the things that he's done in the past. But, they, again, is that they filled the gaps pretty well, and we'll see.
Where the Indiana Pacers have experienced this before. Do you remember when Paul George had that ugly injury?
Yep.
And it was questionable if he come back at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
And he did.
Yeah, he did. I guess my question would be is can he do it this year or will it take him to midseason or will it take him to next year to really get back to the old form? And I think, when you talk to people you listen to people, it's all about that confidence of going out, and you saw Tatum this year to where he was able to play a few games, but then toward the end, any little injury or tweak, you want to kind of sit him down because you don't want to have a real permanent injury. But Kevin Durant was able to come back from it and others. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I guess I look at it also as not to put the burden solely on Halliburton. I think the other individuals have to step up. And last year, I think a few other players kind of emerged and shown that they can step up. So this is going to be very interesting this year.
Now, talking about the other players that stepped up, in your opinion, which one of those players really got to step up this year and show what they got?
Yeah, I think that Nimhart showed some differences, and I think he showed that he can, he played point guard, and that's not maybe his natural position, but I think he did really well. I think Jerice Walker really showed some things. I think that Siakam, played the same way. He made the All-Star team. The biggest thing will be is that can they replace the defense that they're be missing from Miles Turner? Miles Turner had, a few intangibles and people, criticized him some for not scoring. But at the end of the day, he would help cover up a lot of things under the bucket. So let's see if Zubac can do that same thing because it allows them to really play aggressive defense and, for lack of better terms, cheat a little bit if you got somebody that's got your back.
Now, that's a good point. speaking of centers, or at least forwards, they signed, or at least had in the summer league, a undrafted player from Nebraska. Are you familiar with that guy?
I'm not sure who that one is.
Okay. I'm going to back off of that. But speaking of
He was from Nebraska.
Nebraska, and he was a forward. He's about 6'11", 6'10", can open up the 3-pointers, great vision.
Oh, I did notice, and I can't recall his name. But I didn't recognize that he was a rookie. I thought he might have been in the league, but nonetheless, you're right. He was able to shoot, but I don't know that. I think he and Braden Smith will be both two-way players. So I think they're counting on them to really fill in the blanks if there are any injuries or anything like that. So I don't know that they're really their main players that they're going to really count on.
That's a good point. Hopefully, do you see them tag teaming any two players? Because remember back when the Pacers had the Davis boys?
Yep.
Dale Davis and Antonio Davis. Is there a possibility that they have any of that combination going on this year?
I think that at the end of the day, really they're going back. They filled in, if you take a look at that team that was there 2 years ago, then or really less than 2 years ago, honestly. They've gotten the one replacement. They have Zubac for Miles Turner. And then Obi Toppin's coming back. He was injured a bit last year, and at least the times I saw him, he looked really good. So I think that's almost the core that they've got. They signed Larry Nance as a backup there, and I'm trying to recall the other gentleman's name that they brought in from Philadelphia. Let's see. I'm looking up right now just so I can remember what his name is.
And I think he came off the bench and started a couple of times in Philadelphia.
Yes, he did. So I think that Jalen Slauson looked pretty good. So that's another backup that they can have in case there's injuries. I think that who didn't play was that Ethan Thomas was good, and then they brought in, it was Kelly Oubre they brought in, and so I think Oubre and Zubac will be the ones that get the main minutes along with Jerice Walker off the bench. So the key is these days you look at the really good teams, and they have a good second string that can come in, and the Pacers kind of prove that that's really important in a long season.
So who are you thinking? Who are you projecting to be the starters? Now, I know the season's young.
Yeah, I think that it's still, Nembhard and Neesmith, Zubac, I think, Siakam, and Halliburton.
All right. And who do you think be the first man off the bench?
So I'm guessing it's, let me remember the names. I think you'll have Obi Toppin. You'll have Jay Huff. You'll have T.J. McConnell, of course. You'll have Jerice Walker, and a mixture of Ben Shepherd and Quentin Jackson. They've got the ability, and Larry Nance, so they've got the ability to move people around, and especially if somebody's hot that day. So the key will be is that if you're going to really run, then you've got enough bodies out there to really be able to keep everybody's energy up in a long season.
Now, you mentioned earlier about defense. Now, when they drafted Walker, that was one of his specialists. That's one of the reasons they drafted him, because he was good on defense. What do you think about that? What do you think about him?
So I think not only has he been playing better defensively, I think he's been playing better offensively. And it's all about confidence, right? I mean, all those guys, if you make it to the NBA, you've got some skills. And so, now you've got to just kind of bring those out and have the confidence, but also be able to fit as a team and really be able to fit in that team concept. So the more they play together, and I'm looking to say that the real tell will be around the first of the year. I think it's going to take the first half of the season for them to really get to know each other again. And then, the tell of the tape will be around January to see how they do then.
Yeah. Now, what would you say that people say at the beginning of the year, you need to get it together early, because if you lose too many games, you're out?
Well, I I think the year that they really did well, you think about it, Neesmith and Nimhart were out quite a bit, and they came back after the first of the year, and man, it really made a big difference. I think every team will go through ebbs and flows,
Mhm.
and so it's like anything else, is how you finish.
All right.
So I'm more about being able to finish strong versus starting out. I mean, it's nice to do the whole thing because then you can get a good seating and be able to get some buys up front. But at the end of the day, you want to really finish strong.
All right. So who do you see as early? Who do you see as the major competitors or teams in the East?
Wow, the East has gotten pretty strong this year. Philly's gotten strong, with the addition of Jaylen Brown. I think that you can't ever overlook Boston. Of course, New York's got to be the favorite because they're there. Cleveland's going to have a strong team. Atlanta, man, they've really loaded up, especially defensively. So, I think the East has gotten stronger than the West, honestly, team for team.
That's true. But I'm going to stick you to answering the question early on. Take New York out because I agree with you 100%. They would be the favorite because they did.
Yeah, they're the champions. So you can't discount them as a champion. So I think it'll be Philly. I think it'll be Atlanta and Cleveland.
Hmm. Okay. All right.
Now I didn't say now the other one is I'm curious to see Miami's got to have some other players. They've got a couple three guys down there, but my goodness, they can't do the whole thing. And this, as we were just talking about, having a good bench and having people that can come in, all they are is an injury away from
Mhm.
really getting it. So we'll see what happens. If you asked me what a weakness may be in the Pacers, um, I think they can. I think others are stepping up, but they don't have one of those outside shooters. So maybe it's somebody to open up on the outside. But you know what? Um, Neesmith and others have been, over the years, they've been getting better and better. And so, I think that they can come through. I'm also a big believer that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I
Mhm.
might say, boy, you need this outside shooting. But if you play a clamp down defense and you play hard, that, I don't discount anything.
Now, what do you think about Shepard? Can Shepard fill that shoe as far as opening up? Because he seemed last year to be a pretty good 3-pointer shooter.
Yeah, he is. I think his strong point, though, is he's a good defensive player. And he's a good team player. So he's not going to go out there as one that you're going to say, hey, you've got to get this shot all the time. But nonetheless, I think you can win that way. I- you know, I'm not one that says you got to have a bunch of 3-pointers. I mean, it's nice if you can do that, but it's that old saying, you can live by it and you can die by it.
All right. You know who say that all the time is Reggie Miller.
Mm,
He said you live by the three, you die by the three. And he said shooters shoot.
yep. Yep.
Now, you did mention Philadelphia
Hmm.
because it looks like they got some pretty good pieces of the puzzle this
They
year.
do. They
Well,
do.
what do you think about LeBron joining Philadelphia? Do you think that he'll be productive or do you think that he should retire? And expand on your answer, please.
Yeah, I think two things. First of all, is the guy's smart. He keeps himself in shape. He knows how to play as a team. And so they've got some players on the team that do the same, that can do the same thing. And so if they all buy in that we're going to play as a team, my goodness, on paper, they look awful strong. And if Embiid comes, last year he looked really good. And the word is he's coming in better shape than he has in the past. I think if he looks at it, and if they all look at it and say, here's my opportunity, they're
Mhm.
all motivated. My goodness, now anybody can be beat. And I don't know how strong their bench is,
Mhm, mhm.
but at the end of the day, on paper, that starting five looks really, really strong.
All right, I'm going to have you to switch gears a little bit and dig into your basket of basketball knowledge and look beyond the starter of every team. If you look at the NBA in the whole, which team do you feel had the best second team coming in?
Boy, now I think you're getting into, I think the Pacers have a great second team. I think Atlanta has a good backup team. I think Cleveland does as well. So those are the teams. I mean, at the end of the day, the teams I mentioned that um, have the best opportunity, I think, are the ones that have not only good starters,
Mhm.
but they have good backup as well.
Now, what
It's
about
you know,
Conley?
it's a long season. It's 80 games.
That is very true. Now, you did mention McConnell
Hmm.
for the Pacers. Where did he fit into this?
Well, I think he's going to be coming off the bench, as a point guard along with Quentin Jackson. So the beauty is that it gives the coach the ability to adjust based on the teams they're playing. It means that, I don't have to have one size fits all. I can throw I can throw different schemes and different players at you, so it's very difficult for you to plan for me. And that to me is that's the best of all worlds, right? Is to really have um, the ability to morph and not have a strategy that you're so predictable.
Hmm. Speaking of that, coaching, what do you think about Carlisle? From the first time he was around to now.
Well, I think everybody evolves, and that's a difficult job. And so I think the fact that he's evolved, and again, it's because people evolve, and the players aren't the same as they were in the past, which is a good thing. I think that it's like anything, like on your job or on mine, is that the ones that win the best are the ones that are able to adapt their strategy based on the players and the tools they've got. And he seemed to be willing to do that. So that's a formula for success. Anybody that just tries to say, "Hey, I'm going to force you into my mode," um, that doesn't seem to work as well.
All right, fair enough. Now I'm going to stay in Indiana, right? And I'm going
Okay.
to go to the Fever, right? The
Okay.
WNBA.
Hmm.
So right now they're sitting number one in the East.
Hmm.
And I think their record's like 18-10, something of that. And they have a couple of stars. They
Hmm.
have Mitchell,
Hmm.
Clark,
Hmm.
Billing, Boston.
Hmm.
So what do you think of their chances of going all the way this year in the WNBA?
Boy, they went pretty well last year and didn't have all the firepower they were. I watched them the other day, and my goodness. And I can't recall the team they were playing, but maybe it was Connecticut or one of them. But boy, they looked really good. I think that their defense seems to be lacking sometimes, but their scoring, I think the last 3 or 4 games, they've scored over 100 points in every game. In the game I watched, they scored 123 points. So if you can do that day in, day out, at the end of the day, your offense becomes your defense.
Well, absolutely. Now, there have been a lot of discussion about mention of MVP this year. Is it going to be Mitchell? Is it going to be Clark? When you look at the two, what's your opinion of the better player, all around player, Clark or Mitchell?
I think they're both comparable. At the end of the day, I'm not necessarily into trying to say this one's better than the other. I just think, how do they play as a team,
Mhm.
and are they effective? And are they able to do the things their coach is asking them to do? And I say they both are able to do that, when is needed. So I would take either one of them. Honestly, I would take those three that you mentioned on any team that I've seen. They all look like they have a great attitude, look like they like playing together. And they seem to be really tenacious going after the ball. So again, it's back to, can you play as a team? Because I'm big on not necessarily saying you got to have any one or two, three that are stars. I
Mm.
look and say, you can have stars, but can you play it together as a team? And boy, they sure seem to be able to do that. So can they keep that up the rest of the season? And again, is last year when Clark was hurt, I wasn't having high expectations, but they sure stepped up. So with the addition of Clark, boy, that's a huge difference. And those ladies can shoot. I mean, my goodness, you can say what you want about any of them, but they sure know how to shoot the ball. Again, the biggest thing lacking a little bit is defense, but their offense compensates for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think their defense is outstanding. I think some of the additions they got this year, Billings from one of them.
Hmm.
Again, Cunningham, I think this is her second year, and she continued to be a star.
Hmm.
So they're looking pretty good. Now, I do believe that this year with Kelsey Mitchell, I think at this point she's the leader scorer in the team with around 28 points per game. Clark is right behind that with 24. Boston's right around there with 25, and Sophie Cunningham with 27. Now, is one person on the team that I cannot ignore, and maybe you have some comment, and that is Hall. That Lexi Hall, I think that's her name, Lexie Hall. She is a hell of a defensive player, and I mean hell of a defensive player. Now, I did those that you said you watched the game. I think you said it might have been in Connecticut, but what do you think about her?
So again, is that I haven't focused so much, and I don't disagree with you. I think that um recognizing what your role is
Mm-hmm.
and going out and performing in that fashion. But at the end of the day, I think they all step up when it's needed. And so it's back to there's only one ball out there. And if that's the scheme the coach is asking them to play with those big three, but then the others kind of clean up, then, I've seen Sophie Cunningham play well. All of them seem to be able to step up when it's necessary. And that's why you said they're number one in the East.
That's right. No one in the
You
East.
know, you can say what you want, but if you're number one in the East, then I got to say, okay, what am I doing wrong?
You're right. And also, I'm going to point out in the beginning of the game, I think in the first 5 games, they lost with a margin of 4 points or less. So it was very competitive. And if they would have turned those into wins,
Right.
really on top of the West.
And I think you'll go back to the thing that we've talked about in the past is that, I think a lot of people always look at the numbers and the stats, and I think those things are important. Rebounding and turnovers. I think they have a few turnovers that, are a little bit ill-advised, but you know, really tracking all the intangibles that players do is really important. And that's back to playing as a team. And it seems like as the season's gone along, they're playing more and more as a team.
That's
And that's really, really the important aspect of that.
Yeah, you hit on a very important point because they are the number one team with turnovers.
Mm.
So that's an area of improvement. But however, it appears they was able to overcome that.
Yeah. And you know what? If you're playing fast and if you're putting up a lot of points, at the end of the day, turnovers can happen, so, you want to clean those things up. But again, excuse me, far be it for me to criticize if you're number one and you're playing well and you're beating teams.
That's right. That's right.
Because again, there's no one way. We might say, boy, you got to cut these turnovers down, but there's more than one way to win. And if you can win even having turnovers, I'd say go for it.
Yep. Preferably not, right? Because we do want to limit those. Preferably not. But however, I think you mentioned earlier that sometimes your offense can be your defense.
Yep.
If you continue to score in the hundreds in the WNBA, you will be successful. Because I think they have broke a record with the number of 100+ points scored per game. Now, with saying that, I'm going to ask you to put your other cap on because we're going to switch gears, but we're staying in Indiana.
Okay.
Because we're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts.
Hmm.
Now, you can talk about it in general because I want to know, what do you think about Daniel Jones? He started off strong, had an injury, kind of flopped. Where do you see things going for the Colts this year?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing for him with Halliburton, right? I mean, coming back from that injury and being mobile back there just a little bit and having the confidence to play that way, that's awful tough. And I think, those coaches and those trainers, they are there. And I'm not saying it. I haven't seen him in training camp. And, if they put him out there starting, then the expectation is that you win. It's like anything else is that, if you're hurt, then stay out of the game. But if you're not hurt and you get in, you expect to produce. But again, it still takes, especially in football and others, it takes a year or so to really be able to come back. And I just don't know if he'll be ready, but we'll see. We'll see real quick.
So what's your thought on this, fill in? Let's say that early in the season that Daniel Jones re-injured his injury or just not producing. Do you have confidence in Anthony Richardson to come in and take us to the promised land?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the question would be is that I'd use the term potential. But what we've seen in the past is that not so much there yet. But who knows? You can't discount anybody. I think that it's like anything else is that I think you got to give Daniel Jones enough of a chance. You can't have too short of you don't want to have a quick hook on anybody. But because once you do that, now you're starting to, if the confidence isn't there and you're worried about it, and you start pulling people out, now you just kind of erode that confidence. So first of all, is don't put me out there until I'm really ready. Even if I say I'm ready, but don't put me out till you see I'm ready. But then when you do pull me, then be prepared for the consequences. And they've got other options. They've got the quarterback from Notre Dame that he looked pretty decent out there. So the coaches are the ones that really see it and they will know. But at the end of the day, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I think that wide receiver just got hurt. What's the one that they just
Pierce.
yeah, I think he got injured. So if he can come back, and so that's the key. Does he have someone to throw it to? Is the front line, right? I mean, we've seen before is you got to have a good offensive line. And then last year the defense was really lacking. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I got to go back to your comment about confidence and hooking somebody too early. I kind of feel they did that to Richardson. I kind of feel that they kind of beat up his confidence, and now he contributed to it a little bit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I wonder where his head is at right now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do, and I hear this on ESPN all the time, is that the quarterback is the most complex role to play. Well, okay, then if it's that tough or whatever, then don't play it. But I think that what football has done is that they've put so much emphasis on quarterbacks that it's almost like if you don't have a good quarterback, you can't win. And it's back to my comments with the Pacers. You got to have a team. And I think, my belief is that you can win with a mediocre quarterback. If you have a great team, you can win with a mediocre quarterback. But at the end of the day, even if you're a mediocre quarterback and then you win, by definition, they'll come back and say you're a great quarterback. So, you know what I mean? And so, I think focusing more on teams because when you do that, then now you've got to sink so much money in that one position that you can't get the quality players in the other areas. So I'd rather have a great team that I can put in versus sinking all my dollars into one individual.
I see that. Now I know that I'm interviewing you, but I'm going to have to throw this comment in. I still believe, and you can tell me your thoughts on this. I still believe defense wins championship. So if you're going to put some money somewhere, put it on the defensive side of the ball. Nothing against the offense, nothing about the quarterback, nothing against the quarterback, nothing against defensive linemen. But in my opinion, defense still wins championships.
Yeah. And it's back to, what I said up front. There's more than one way. And you know what? If you won, like the Bears did the one year with all defense and everybody start putting in defense. Then if you win again with offense with wide receivers and everybody starts putting money in wide receivers, they try to pivot over to what's in vogue versus saying, hey, let's come up with a strategy based on the players I have. And football teams are a lot more complex because you got so many players. So you got to rely also on a lot of your assistant coaches and everyone else to really make those things happen. So we'll see if the Colts coach is able to translate that and make it happen. I think they can. Where they'll be at based on the offensive line and based on the ability for Daniel Jones to be able to come back and be the player that they think he is, it's still a question mark.
All right. With that being said, we're going to close out on this interview. But I hope you are absolutely right on the Colts coaching staff because, they're walking on thin ice. Not only with the organization, they're walking on thin ice with me. So I think they had a chance to do something.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things too, where you think about it. How many of us go to our job every day and not have all the cameras, all the eyes, all the reporters, everything else watching your every move, everything you do, every book you read, whether you pick your nose or not, and someone's trying to draw a conclusion based on that. You can go to Starbucks and get a hot coffee and someone's going to read something into it. If you can ignore all the noise and just go off and do your job, then you can make it happen. But boy, if that gets to you, you start changing and adjusting And, the fear is that if indeed your job is on the line, you'll start making changes because you're hearing all the voices and everything else. And that to me is a mistake. If you're going to go with what your gut is and go for it. And at the end of the day, even if you do lose your job, do it because you did it because you felt like it was the right thing to do, not because you're listening to all the fans and other idiots like you and me tell you what you ought to be doing.
Well, well, I'm looking at the other side of the coin. I don't know a job that I have at a corporation where I underperformed for 10 years and I was still hired. Right. Yeah. And they underperformed for 10 years and they just haven't met the goals nor the objective. And I haven't been with an organization yet that has that type of patience. So
no, I hear what you're saying.
So with that being said, we still say go Colts, go Fever, go Pacers. And thank you very much, Mr. Phil-Ann, for being on our very first session with Barbershop.talk Sports.
Well, thanks for having me, J-Rod. It's been a pleasure. And I watch you guys all the time, and it's always that you guys really bring some insights. Doesn't mean I agree with everything you guys say. However, you sure bring up topics that allow us to go back into the barbershop and have a discussion.
And that's what it's all about. If it's talked about in the barbershop on Saturday, we're going to talk about it on our podcast. And with that being said, we're going to sign off. And thanks again, Phil-Ann. Appreciate it.
All the best.